We live in a world that constantly tells us to be kind, to give, to always put others before ourselves. And while kindness is a beautiful thing, a godly thing, an essential part of our faith, what happens when that kindness is given without limits, without wisdom, without discernment? What happens when we keep giving and giving until there's nothing left of us? Too many of us have been taught that to be a good person, a good Christian, we must always be available, always be accommodating, always be saying yes. But I want to tell you something that might shake you a little. Kindness without boundaries will drain you. It will deplete you. It will leave you empty, exhausted, and ineffective. Some of you are walking around carrying burdens that God never assigned to you, doing favors for people who never even say thank you, constantly bending over backward for others while neglecting yourself. And the truth is, you're not helping them, you're enabling them. You're making life easier for people who should be learning to stand on their own. Some people don't need another handout. They need to learn how to carry their own weight. But because you don't want to seem unkind, because you don't want anyone to be upset with you, you keep saying yes, even when it costs you your peace. And let's be real, there are people in your life right now who don't even appreciate your kindness. They expect it, they demand it. And the moment you stop, the moment you say no, the moment you set a boundary, they turn on you. That's how you know they were never after your kindness. They were after what they could get from you. That's why you feel so drained. That's why you feel resentful. You're pouring into people who take and take and take, but never pour back into you. You're trying to be everything to everyone, and in the process, you've lost yourself. And I know what you're thinking, but isn't kindness what we're called to? Isn't that what Jesus showed? Yes, Jesus was kind, but he wasn't weak. He loved, but he was also wise. He knew when to give and when to step away. He knew when to heal and when to leave a place because his presence wasn't welcome. Even he didn't try to please everyone. So why are you? Why are you exhausting yourself trying to be all things to all people when even the Son of God didn't do that? Listen to me. Kindness should never come at the cost of your well-being. God didn't call you to be kind to the point of self-destruction. He didn't ask you to sacrifice your mental and emotional health just to keep people comfortable. Some of you are being drained by people God never told you to entertain. You're spending your time, your energy, your resources on people who don't even appreciate it, and God is saying enough. It's time to use wisdom. It's time to be strategic. It's time to recognize that not everyone deserves access to you. You need to learn to step back. You need to learn to say no without feeling guilty. You need to learn that setting boundaries is not unkind, it's necessary. Because if you keep letting people take from you without limits, there will come a day when you have nothing left to give. And when you're empty, when you're broken, when you're burned out, the same people who drained you will be nowhere to be found. So stop carrying weight that isn't yours. Stop saying yes when your spirit is screaming no. Stop letting people manipulate you into overextending yourself. It's not your job to save everyone. It's not your responsibility to fix every problem. God didn't create you to be a doormat. He created you to be a vessel. And a vessel that is constantly being drained will eventually run dry. If you want to be truly effective, if you want to walk in the fullness of what God has for you, you have to be wise with your kindness. You have to stop casting your pearls before swine. Stop giving your best to those who don't value it. Stop letting the wrong people consume your time, your energy, your kindness. Because at the end of the day, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Some of us have been raised to believe that kindness is something we owe to everyone. That no matter how people treat us, we have to smile, we have to serve, we have to give and give, expecting nothing in return. But let me tell you something. Not everyone deserves your kindness. Not everyone should have access to the best of you. Some people will take your kindness, twist it, manipulate it, use it against you, and leave you drained with nothing left to give. And the worst part, they won't feel a single ounce of guilt about it. You see, there are people in your life right now who only keep you around because of what you can do for them. It's not your heart they value, it's your hand. It's not your presence they love, it's your provision. As long as you're saying yes, as long as you're showing up, as long as you're giving, they're smiling in your face. But the moment you need something, the moment you set a boundary, the moment you finally decide that you're done being used, they'll show you exactly who they are. And I know about you, but I'd rather know now than later. There's a difference between being kind and being naive. There's a difference between having a good heart and letting people walk all over you. And I know what some of you are thinking, but isn't that what we're called to do? Aren't we supposed to be kind to everyone? Yes, but kindness without wisdom is dangerous. You are never called to be reckless with your kindness. You are never meant to pour into people who only want to drain you. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your whole life trying to prove your goodness to people who were never going to love you, never going to appreciate you, never going to value you the way you deserve. Some of you have been trying to be kind to people who have already made up their minds about you. No matter what you do, no matter how much you give, they will always find a reason to criticize, to complain, to take advantage. And the hard truth is, that's not a reflection of you, that's a reflection of them. You cannot make someone appreciate you. You cannot make someone respect you. And the more you try, the more you will exhaust yourself in relationships, friendships, and connections that were never meant to be sustained. You have to start paying attention to the signs. Pay attention to the people who only come around when they need something. Pay attention to the ones who get upset when you set a boundary. Pay attention to those who are comfortable taking from you but never think to pour back into you. Because real love, real friendship, real relationships, those go both ways. There's a mutual exchange, a mutual respect, a mutual investment. But some of you are the only ones doing the giving, the sacrificing, the showing up. And the truth is, you deserve better. At some point, you have to make a decision. Will you keep giving to people who only take, or will you start being intentional about who gets access to you? Will you keep letting people drain you, or will you start protecting your peace? Because the reality is not everyone who comes into your life is meant to stay. Some people are only there for a season, some are only there to teach you a lesson, and some should have never been allowed in at all. And I know that's hard to hear, but it's the truth. The moment you stop giving freely to those who don't deserve it, the moment you stop allowing people to take advantage of your kindness, you will see things clearly. You will start to realize who was really there for you and who was only there for what you could do for them. And when you finally walk away, don't be surprised when they try to make you feel guilty, because people who are used to taking without giving don't know what to do when the well runs dry. So hear me when I say this. You are not obligated to be kind to everyone at your own expense. You are not called to be a doormat. You are not required to give endlessly to those who never pour back into you. Your kindness is valuable. Your love is valuable. Your presence is valuable. And not everyone deserves it. Some people have this idea that Jesus was just this gentle, always smiling, always agreeable man who never confronted anyone, never walked away, never said a hard word. But if you really read the Gospels, if you really study how Jesus moved, you'll see that he wasn't just kind. He was wise. He knew when to be soft, and he knew when to be firm. He knew when to extend his hand, and he knew when to withdraw it. He wasn't led by people's expectations. He was led by purpose. There were times when Jesus healed the sick, fed the hungry, and forgave sinners with open arms. But there were also times when he rebuked people, when he flipped over tables, when he walked away without explaining himself, He didn't treat everyone the same because not everyone had the same heart. He knew that some people came to him with pure intentions, but others came to manipulate, to test, to twist his words, and he never let those people control him. Some of us are trying to be more kind than Jesus himself. Some of us are breaking our backs trying to please people who have no real love for us, trying to prove something to people who have already made up their minds. But Jesus didn't waste his time like that. He didn't run after people who rejected him. He didn't beg people to listen. He spoke the truth. He offered what he had, and if they didn't want it, he moved on. And yet here we are, stuck in places where we are not valued, stuck in relationships that are draining us, stuck in cycles where we keep giving and giving to people who don't even care. You've got to start using wisdom. Jesus knew who to invest in. He knew who was ready to receive and who was just there to argue. When the Pharisees came to him trying to trap him with questions, he didn't waste time trying to make them understand. He didn't beg them to see the truth. He gave them what they needed to hear, and when they refused to listen, he let them be. Some of us need to do the same. Some of us are exhausting ourselves trying to prove something to people who don't even want to see the truth. And then there were times when Jesus walked away, times when he knew his presence wasn't welcome, times when he refused to perform miracles because of people's unbelief. That right there should tell you something. Even Jesus, the Son of God, the Messiah, didn't try to force his kindness, his wisdom, or his power on people who didn't value it. He didn't heal in certain places because their hearts were closed. Some of us need to take that same approach. We keep giving to people who refuse to change. We keep trying to help people who don't even want help. We keep trying to pour into people who have already shown us they are not ready to receive. Jesus also set boundaries. He loved everyone, but he didn't give everyone the same access to him. He spoke to the crowds, but he walked closely with the 12. He shared wisdom with many, but he revealed the deepest things only to a few. And even among the 12, he had an inner circle, Peter, James, and John, who saw things no one else did. That's wisdom. That's discernment. Some of us are out here giving equal access to everybody, letting the wrong people in too close, allowing people who don't deserve that level of intimacy to sit at our table, and we wonder why we feel so drained, so frustrated, so hurt. There are people in your life right now who don't need full access to you. There are people you need to love from a distance. There are places you need to walk away from. There are conversations you need to stop having. Jesus didn't waste his time where he wasn't wanted. He didn't force people to accept him. He didn't bend over backward trying to convince people of who he was. He knew his value. He knew his purpose. And if someone rejected him, he kept moving. If Jesus, the greatest example of love, the most powerful demonstration of kindness, knew when to walk away, when to set boundaries, when to withhold his presence, then why do we think we have to be available to everyone at all times? Why do we keep giving to people who don't respect us? Why do we stay in places where we are not valued? At some point, you have to recognize that your time, your energy, your kindness, it's valuable. And just like Jesus, you have to know when to give it and when to withhold it. Because real wisdom is knowing that not everyone deserves the same level of access to you. Some people hear the word boundary and they think it means being cold, being unkind, being selfish. But the truth is, boundaries are not a lack of kindness. They are wisdom in action. Setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out. It's about protecting what God has given you. It's about guarding your peace, your time, your energy, your calling. And if you don't learn how to set boundaries, you will live your life exhausted, frustrated, and overwhelmed by people who were never meant to have that much access to you. Too many of us think that saying yes to everything and everyone makes us good people. We've been conditioned to believe that to be kind is to be available at all times, to never say no, to always be accommodating. But that's not kindness. That's a lack of discernment. That's a recipe for burnout. That's how you end up carrying burdens you were never meant to carry, solving problems that aren't yours to solve, taking responsibility for people who should be learning to stand on their own. There are people in your life right now who expect you to be available whenever they call, to jump whenever they ask, to bend over backward no matter what it costs you. And if you don't set a boundary, if you don't start drawing a line, they will keep taking from you until you have nothing left to give. And here's the hard truth. When you finally break down, when you finally reach your limit, the same people who drained you will not be there to pour back into you. You have to stop feeling guilty for protecting your peace. You have to stop apologizing for needing rest. You have to stop letting people make you feel bad for saying no. Jesus himself set boundaries. He loved deeply, but he was not always available. He took time away from the crowds to pray, to rest, to be alone with the Father. He didn't heal everyone who asked. He didn't meet every demand that was placed on him. He knew that in order to fulfill his purpose, he had to protect his time, his energy, and his focus. Some of us have been taught that love means tolerating anything. That kindness means always turning the other cheek, always keeping quiet, always letting things slide. But real love isn't about allowing yourself to be mistreated. Real love isn't about staying silent when something is wrong. Real love isn't about letting people take advantage of you in the name of being a good person. There is a difference between being kind and being passive. There is a difference between having a good heart and letting people walk all over you. And if you don't recognize that difference, you will spend your life being used by people who don't care about you, drained by relationships that were never meant to last, and weighed down by burdens that were never yours to carry. Some people in your life have mistaken your kindness for weakness. They believe that because you are patient, you will always be available. That because you are forgiving, you will always tolerate disrespect. That because you have a good heart, you will never walk away. And as long as you allow it, they will keep taking. They will keep pushing. They will keep expecting you to be the one who always bends, always sacrifices, always gives without receiving anything in return. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, is this love or is this manipulation? Is this a relationship or is this control? Because love is not about using someone until they have nothing left to give. Love is not about keeping someone in a cycle of guilt, obligation, and exhaustion. Some of you have been so afraid of being seen as unkind that you have allowed yourself to be mistreated. You have let people disrespect you, lie to you, take advantage of you, all because you didn't want to seem rude, all because you didn't want to lose them. But what kind of relationship is that? What kind of love is that? If someone only stays in your life because you never say no, because you never call them out, because you always make excuses for them, then they are not in your life because they love you. They are in your life because they benefit from your silence. Jesus was full of love, full of grace, full of compassion, but he was never afraid to call things out. He was never afraid to speak the truth, even when it made people uncomfortable. He confronted hypocrisy. He stood up to those who twisted the truth. He rebuked those who tried to manipulate him. And yet here we are, acting like being a Christian means allowing ourselves to be doormats. Acting like love means putting up with anything, tolerating anything, never saying a hard word, never walking away when something is toxic. Real love holds people accountable. Real love is not afraid to say this is not okay. Real love is not afraid to set a boundary and say, I will not allow this in my life. And if someone gets angry, if someone accuses you of being unkind because you refuse to tolerate their mistreatment, that says more about them than it does about you. Because healthy, mature, loving people do not demand that you sacrifice your peace for their comfort. Healthy people do not expect you to suffer in silence just so they can continue their bad behavior without consequences. Some of you need to stop making excuses for people who keep hurting you. Stop justifying their behavior. Stop telling yourself that's just how they are. Stop saying maybe they didn't mean it. If someone keeps disrespecting you, if someone keeps taking advantage of you, if someone keeps showing you over and over again that they do not value you, believe them. Pay attention to the patterns. Pay attention to the way they treat you when you stop giving, when you stop accommodating, when you stop bending over backward to make them happy. Because real love, real friendship, real relationships should not require you to lose yourself in order to keep them. If someone is only in your life because you are constantly sacrificing, constantly adjusting, constantly giving while they take, then that is not love. That is control. That is manipulation. That is not a relationship. That is an imbalance. And if you keep allowing it, if you keep ignoring it, if you keep telling yourself that being kind means staying silent, you will wake up one day and realize that you have spent your life pouring into people who never truly cared about you. Love does not mean tolerating everything. Kindness does not mean keeping quiet about things that are hurting you. And if someone truly loves you, they will respect your boundaries. They will value your well-being. They will not expect you to break yourself just to keep them comfortable. Because real love, real kindness, real relationships should never require you to lose yourself. Some of you have been carrying people who were never meant to be your responsibility. You've been holding on to relationships that are draining you, friendships that no longer serve you, and connections that have long passed their season. And the only reason you're still holding on is because you don't want to seem unkind. You don't want to be the bad guy. You don't want to be the one who lets go. But let me tell you something sometimes. The kindest thing you can do is walk away. There are people in your life right now who have become too comfortable taking from you. They know you'll always be there, always answer, always give, always fix, always show up, even when they do nothing in return. They have learned that no matter how they treat you, no matter how much they neglect you, no matter how little they invest in you, you will always be available. And as long as you allow it, they will continue. They will keep taking, they will keep draining, they will keep expecting you to do all the work. You were never meant to carry people who refuse to walk on their own. You were never called to keep pouring into people who never pour back. You are not responsible for saving people who don't want to be saved. Some of you are exhausted because you've taken on burdens that God never assigned to you. You've been trying to fix people who don't want to change. You've been trying to help people who don't even appreciate your help. And the truth is, the longer you hold on, the more they will take. There is a time for kindness, and there is a time for wisdom. There is a time to help, and there is a time to step back. There is a time to give, and there is a time to say enough. Jesus himself didn't chase after people who walked away. He didn't beg people to listen. He didn't force anyone to follow him. He gave them the truth. He extended his hand. And if they rejected it, he moved on. Some of us need to do the same. Some of us need to stop trying to convince people to value us. Stop trying to make people love us. Stop trying to prove ourselves to people who were never meant to stay. The truth is, not everyone is meant to go where God is taking you. Not everyone can handle the weight of your calling. Not everyone is supposed to have access to you forever. Some people were only meant to be in your life for a season, but you have made them permanent. And now you're frustrated. Now you're drained. Now you're carrying dead weight that is slowing you down. And the longer you hold on, the harder it will be to step into the next season of your life. You cannot elevate while carrying people who refuse to grow. You cannot move forward while holding on to relationships that are keeping you stuck. And if you are not careful, your kindness, your inability to let go will keep you tied to places, to people, to situations that God has been trying to release you from. Some of you need to start letting people experience the consequences of their own choices. You need to stop stepping in and rescuing people from problems they created. You need to stop sacrificing your own peace just to make someone else comfortable. Because the truth is, you are not helping them, you are enabling them. You are keeping them from learning the lessons they need to learn. You are standing in the way of their growth. Jesus never forced himself on anyone. He never begged people to stay. He never chased after those who turned away. And yet here we are, bending over backward, exhausting ourselves, trying to keep people who don't even value us. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, are you holding on out of love, or are you holding on out of fear? Are you staying because you truly believe this relationship is meant to last, or are you staying because you don't want to be seen as unkind? Because real kindness, real love, real wisdom knows when to stay and when to walk away. Some people are only in your life because you have refused to let them go. Some situations are still draining you because you have refused to move on. And if you would just release what God has been telling you to release, if you would just let go of the things that are no longer serving you, you would find peace like never before. you would find clarity, you would find strength. But as long as you hold on, as long as you keep carrying people, refuse to grow, you will stay stuck. Letting go does not make you unkind. Walking away does not make you a bad person. Setting boundaries does not make you selfish. It makes you wise. It makes you obedient. It makes you free. And when you finally release what is weighing you down, you will step into the next season of your life with peace, with strength, and with the understanding that not everyone was meant to go where God is taking you.